All right, this is always great. We're in studio. We've got Greg Itahara.
Itahara. Hey, just call me Greg. It's all good.
I know, but I wanna nail it.
Okay.
But yeah, Greg, if you are deep in this culture, the running sneakerhead race culture, you've come across some of your designs.
Yes.
So Greg does a lot of, you said garment tattooer.
Yes. That just kind of like came to me as an epiphany. Because as you know, you and I, every time I see that, I'm like, hey, we have the same kind of like color scheme.
Yeah, it's true.
Going there.
And on that side.
Yeah. Do you ever want to like?
Megan has banned me from getting any.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've been told I will get a divorce.
Okay.
If I get more tattoos.
So no more of that. So customizing singlets is one of those things where once the ink touches the fabric, it's on there. Like if you mess up, there have been countless times I'd had to like reorder the singlet at full price, which is sort of like testing the capabilities of different fabrics and different techniques and stuff like that. But then after time, like anything, you kind of get the groove on. So it came to me like, you know, tattooers, once the ink is in the skin, it's permanent.
Yeah.
It's there. And I thought to myself, that's the exact same thing that I'm doing, but with garments. It's once the ink is on there, it's on there. So I kind of just, for just for the sake of my own crazy vibes in my head, I'm like, hey, I'm like a garment tattooer. so that's how it kind of long-winded
But
came
you
up.
just don't do singlets.
No.
Give me a list of things that you have been asked to do.
I have been asked to do armbands, arm sleeves. I've asked to do hats. I've been asked to do shorts, shoes, track spikes, pretty much anything within the running genre and also track and field genre, I've been asked to do.
It's kind of weird though. Like, okay, as an artist, you probably didn't always do garments and shoes and running stuff, but you're kind of in this one little niche of, I mean, and there's plenty of customers in this little niche.
Yes.
But you're in a niche. How did you end up being like the customizer for the run space?
I always kind of reflect back of the pandemic. You know, I was a designer, graphic designer for road races, for different races across the country, not only in where I live in Chicago, but once the pandemic hit, there was no racing, there was no running. And so therefore there was no design work for myself. And being a sneakerhead, I've had so many sneakers in my arsenal, the creative boredom kind of sets in. You know, like I have to express myself in a certain way, like just visually. Because I can't write worth poop. I can't, like, I'm the worst communicator verbally, but artistically, if you write down something on a napkin, I could translate that visually.
Visual.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, I started watching a whole lot of YouTube videos and how to prep shoes and how to paint. And so I'm like, well, I have nothing else to do. So I started doing that. Posted, and then someone actually that was following me asked, hey, can you do a singlet? I'm like, I don't know. Send me one, I'll try it. And so tried it and it worked, and it just kind of started from there.
So, but it's interesting because I've seen a lot of designs come out from you, and I've been the beneficiary of one of your designs for our Tokyo Marathon singlet, which I love and is framed in our office here. I've seen the Asics shoes that you've done for the running event when they were announcing the Nimbus. And obviously, we just had a guest in-house, Kayano-San, and you did a special pair of shoes for him.
Yes.
But it's gotten to be like, this is where you're swinging.
Yes, which, I mean, for me, art is art. No matter if you're painting at home, like I've seen some of your artwork, you're doing the shoe.
I'm doing the opposite of you. You're painting on a shoe. I'm painting a shoe.
But, I mean, you're very artistic. You have a very good visual for what,
thank you.
Aesthetically. And, I've seen the artwork that you've done. What what was I getting at? Oh, so art is art. So no matter if it's painting at home as a hobby, as sort of like a mental release, or if it's like designing a kit or designing even a race bib, art is art no matter what medium you apply it to.
Okay, but that brings up a good thought for me. So when sometimes you can get writer's block or creative block.
Yes.
And when you're doing it and you have to do it on a singlet or something, because then there's a time frame. Usually people have, I have a race, here's my singlet, I want artwork on it, and this is when it's going to go. And in this particular case, even the shoes for Kayano-San, you had about 2 weeks to throw that together.
Even less.
Even
actually.
less.
Yeah.
Okay. And that, is there ever a process, knowing that once that ink hits it, is there ever like a point where you're like sitting back and being like, I don't want to start it?
The process for me is pretty much understanding who you're doing it for and what their story is and what is the story that they want to tell. So what I do is I put all these on a sheet of paper, whether if it's a direct thing related to it or a non-direct thing. So I have all these words written down that relate to the story. And from there, I pick and choose which ones are the ones that really pop out, that I can make visually. And I circle them, and then I start doing research on what kind of visual can I do. Say for the Kayano shoe, he retired, but I wanted something, of course, Japanese themed. So the crane represents longevity in Japanese. And so I wanted it to kind of show not only longevity for the shoe, but also longevity for him for all the years that he's been with Asics and continuing to be with Asics from here on out. But then I wanted to also gear it back to the future of the Kayano, which is sort of like a precision machine because it's a stability shoe. And with that, relies on the mechanics of the shoe and also, the aesthetics of it. So it's like a melding of both. So the design I did was precision mechanics and longevity, which is the crane. I combined them both and I illustrated a robot crane, which kind of gave a different spin on the traditional usage of the crane. But I want it to be more of a technical kind of aspect to it.
That's interesting. Sometimes, like with brands and building a brand, they have to figure out their brand values ahead of time. So that process of putting out the words that you're looking for, kind of like that theme, and narrowing it down to this is the core message that we want to produce, is very similar in another way of getting to a brand.
Right. And so sometimes because I'm working on a design on a 2D plane, just flat on my Wacom tablet, when I print out the stencil, now you're working on a 3D plane. So now it's like an actual tattoo. So sometimes you have to readjust because of the contour of the shoe. So say if I visually mocked it up digitally in Photoshop and it looks great on the shoe, but then when you put the stencil on, it goes like way over where you thought, then you sort of that's where like, it's good to adjust it then before you actually, put down and be like, okay, that's fine, start painting. And then you take the stencil off, you're like, oh man, I just messed up. So it's a lot of pre-prep before you get to that stage.
Well, that's a good question. So once you start putting the ink down on it, did you have more than one pair of shoes just in case?
Asics sent me 2 pairs. Okay. One was the 30th anniversary one, which was the blue, the dark blue with the gold. Yeah. And then there's the woman's one, which is pretty much straight white with the accent.
Iridescent.
Iridescent, yeah. And so good thing that Mac sent me, because the illustration would get lost on the men's one because it's just too much saturation of color. I would have to go the opposite and sort of desaturate it in a way so that there's kind of a contrast, because then it would just get too jumbled visually.
So normally you don't get the chance to like watch someone receive your artwork. Right. Most of the time it's people, you're sending it someplace, or in our case with our singlets, Mac had them and gave them to us in Tokyo. So this time you actually got to see someone's face when they're opening it.
Yes.
What was that like?
That was surreal. I'm still kind of soaking that in because Kayano-San, to me and to a lot of you out there, and also probably to yourself, he's a legend. I mean, the things that he's done with Asics, not only in the running spectrum, but just in the footwear spectrum. I mean, he did the basketball shoe for Isaiah Thomas, the Asics one, and he did the very first Nimbus shoe also. That it was sort of like an out of body thing. Like I was just focused on his face, and he's so. Sometimes I don't know. He's so like animated at times, and other times he's like kind of stoic sometimes. But I think he's just trying to figure out how to translate into American what he wants to say. But that experience was just so surreal. I mean, being here is surreal with you for sure. Having the Asics crew here also. And then you have Kayano-san on the very last stop of his, what we call the tour.
Yeah.
It was heartfelt. For me, it was very emotional because I put a lot of me into the artwork, and I think a lot of artists do also. But to actually see him open it up, and I think he mentioned that these are going to go into the archives.
Oh wow!
In Kobe at the Asics headquarters. So that alone, was
it's like sneaking into a museum.
Yeah, like man, next time I go, I need to figure out first what it is. Yeah. But yeah, it's just been to actually see someone actually see it, open it up in person is just an amazing experience.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. Now, I could see the flip side of that, where you said you saw his sketches. He's an artist himself. Is it more nerve-wracking in that position where somebody is a creative to give them a piece?
Yeah. Prior to coming over to the event, I was chatting with him at the hotel in the hotel lobby, and he's showing me all this other artwork that he's done, not just within the running spectrum, but just sketches and drawings and stuff. And I'm like, this guy is a true artist, a true visual storyteller. There was a point when he was opening up the shoe and looking at it, I'm like, oh, I think he's critiquing my work. or thinking, how can this look better? But I think he was looking to see, how did I do it?
Probably.
And just sort of soaking in, like.
I do think, though, like, it's kind of like I would imagine a musician is, when they hear a song or they hear somebody singing, they go, how would that be? I think it's almost impossible in our position not to critique.
Yes.
So when you like see someone else's visual stuff, you're like either wowed and you're like, oh, how did that happen? Like, oh, that's really good. Or you're like, I probably would change this a little bit.
Yeah, that's the thing with like social media, especially Instagram. When I like something, I comment on it. It doesn't matter if it's within the running spectrum or something. If it catches my eye and I think it's sort of like out of the box, kind of like cool creative, I say like dope, or I heart it. But then there are times where I look at something, I'm like, oh, okay. And then I just keep scrolling.
You don't give him a pity tap?
No. No.
That's funny. So you've been doing this for a while now,
Yes.
since at least the pandemic, so like 2-3 years now?
Yes.
Is there one project or one piece, other than the Kayano-San shoes, that stands out to you that you were like, man, I nailed that one. I love that one. I almost don't want to send this away.
It's sort of like picking your favorite kid.
Yeah.
You really can't. But there are moments that really do stand out. I did a thing with Asics where they were promoting the Mind Games documentary that's on Amazon Prime. And there were the cast members of it. And they wanted to present them custom Asics shoes for the premiere in London on the red carpet. And because I couldn't see the screening of the film or what really the film was about. I was just basing it upon very generic questions that I presented Asics to present to them. Because I didn't want it to come from me, and then they'll be like, who is this guy? Or go into their spam folder. Plus, it's going to be a surprise.
Or, they could just search you out on Instagram and see, oh, that's what this guy does.
Right. So they were very generic questions, not tipping off like, hey, this is going to be like a generic. It's more like a questionnaire, like, what's your favorite color?
Pastime.
What would there be someone or something that you would bring to the premiere that you can't? That sort of thing. So from there, I kind of gathered their individual stories and then kind of formulated each shoe specific to what they wrote and what their role was. Like, one person was a professional Street Fighter e-gamer. Another one was a memory person. Another one, professional chess player, mahjong player. And then I sort of like built a story around that and then the answers that they gave me. But actually, those moments like being here today where I actually see them opening it up and then really looking at the shoe and like reading the story visually on the shoe, that moment was very, very impactful for me also. Because as you said, you nailed it on the head. It's rare for me to see someone open up my custom and I could see the reaction. Most of the time it's like me writing them and say, did you get the package? Because I track every single package that goes out to everyone that requests something from me. Because I don't want to be like, okay, once it's out, it's out. I want to make sure my baby gets to its appropriate home safely. So
it was kind of crazy. It was a little nerve-wrack yesterday when the shoes were out on the podium. Because I saw people just picking them up and looking like as if they were from a shoe store. And like, oh, I can get this model. It's like, no, you put that down, please. But so is there anyone that stands out that was like, holy crap, I get to do a singlet for this person, or I can't believe this person reached out, or is there anybody that's been other than Ben Johnson, of course,
and working with you guys? The thing about me is that I'm pretty out of the loop. Like, I'm not on top of like who's who in the running spectrum, because it is a pretty big spectrum, but also it's a very small community, which is kind of weird. So I'm not pertinent to like who's who and who's requesting what. The one story I always tell is I was new to Instagram and Clayton Murphy reached out to me. And he had that, the blue check mark before you had to pay for a blue check mark now.
See, I'm going to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
That thing drives me crazy because I don't know, they need to have, I guess you can't have a different color because then, but like I don't know anymore, is there a reason this person is blue checked, or is there, it kind of was a validation at one point, okay, this person is somebody that you want to know is authentic, that you're speaking to the right person. And now it's like, you could see a person, you're like, oh, he's got a blue check, you check it, and you're like, oh, like this dude, probably not a blue check guy. like an old school blue check guy, you know? So he reached out to me, and I was new to Instagram, and I didn't know what the blue check mark was. And I thought it was like some other dude that just had the name Clayton Murphy. But I researched it, and it's like, oh my gosh, yeah. And so that was one of the times where I'm like, oh, like kind of like almost starstruck, because I followed his career all the way through up until now too. But yeah, that was one that really stuck out with me, because that's when I just kind of first started out. And I did some track spikes for him, which is, I believe, still sitting on his desk. Because he says they're too pretty. He doesn't want to ruin them. So I think they're in a case on his desk at home. That's rad. Yeah. So it's often apparel. It's often shoes. Are you doing canvas? Are you doing stuff or anything that's on another medium, or are you tapped out creatively with the amount of work coming in?
Now, okay, so in the beginning, it was a lot of custom stuff. Now it's sort of getting back into the digital design stuff for people, where it's more or less like, hey, we want to do a collab with you. And I always ask, is it something that you need me painted? Because I can only do like one. Mm-hmm. And usually they say, no, I mean, we'll get it printed and stuff like that. So now that space is kind of like getting bigger with me, where it's like pure digital design, where I just send out like the EPS files for a printer to print on the garment or
so sublimate like or something
yeah,
like
yeah.
So with that, is there any partners that that you can divulge that you'll be doing projects with?
I am speaking next week with Running Warehouse.
Oh, wow.
Just to start a conversation, because they wanted to do something when I was at TRE, but they were just trying to find out what the best thing would be, and when the timing is right, that sort of stuff. There's other stuff in the works, but it's, as I said, I'm the kind of person that when it happens, it happens. I don't like to speculate anymore. Like, oh yeah, I'm talking to this person, then all of a sudden it just falls through. To me, that's like a big disappointment. Not based upon how I feel, but based upon like, oh, we could have created something really good in the running space. And it's sort of like, I'm disappointed that you didn't want to follow through on it.
Yeah, I get that. So in that case, you're working with somebody like Running Warehouse. You're working with people doing custom shoes, custom singlets. The requests come in. I've noticed every once in a while you'll put up on your Instagram that you're not taking any more orders right now. How many projects does it take for you to be like, I gotta shut things down for
It's been that way for a little while. Especially when I post stuff like Ben Johnson stuff, or the stuff that I did with you guys for Tokyo. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, can I get that for like? Do they sell that?"
That was a weird thing. People were like, "How do I get that singlet?" I'm like, it's not really a singlet,
right?
It was a singlet,
right?
Now it's a canvas,
right?
Right. Yeah. So like it is. I think it's confusing for people sometimes when they see it because they don't realize that it's painted on with a brush.
Correct. Yeah, a lot of them think it's printed by a machine or it's dye sublimated, and I tell them no, it's all hand painted. That's why I could do only one-on-one, and that's why the cost is higher than your normal, like, I'll take it to a screen printer, get a screen printed, and here you go. Yeah. It's an actual
$25 a screen,
right?
Yeah.
Each one is truly a functional piece of art.
Yeah, and I saw like Megan has used hers again. I don't know if you saw. I think she wore it at one of the stops.
I think it was the latest. Not
was it in
the one before Miami? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she used hers so that it holds up.
Yes.
Mine has been worn once.
Okay.
And never worn again.
Okay.
And now it's behind glass. So
that's what people do actually. Yeah. They just want. It's sort of like a wedding dress. Not to say that you're wearing a wedding dress.
It could have been.
Like a tuxedo, like a wedding tuxedo. Okay. It's like you want to find the perfect thing to wear for that special day, which is the race, because you're training sometimes throughout the year or 18 weeks or something.
Or it's just like Tokyo. Like, when am I going to get back to Tokyo? That's one of the 6-star majors.
Right.
That's it.
Right. So besides, the bib and the race gear and the finisher medal, this is something else that could carry on a memory, but it's personal to you.
Yeah.
So a lot of people just say, hey, I'm running Berlin, I'm running Chicago. I just want something really cool for this race and this race only.
And I do feel like when you're wearing something like that, it elevates the day. So I can appreciate that. When I ran Boston, I didn't have a Greg's special on, but I bled on it. And I haven't watched that one either. And so I've got a bloody one with my.
Okay.
So I handed that one.
So I joke with Kofuzi on his live stream, a pre-bloody nipple, bloody nipple custom.
Custom, yeah.
And he's like, I don't think. And then I get people DMing me like, can you do that? I'm like, no, it was a joke, you know.
Yeah.
But I was seriously gonna say, okay, the first person that reaches out, just send me your singlet and I'll mail it back to you with bloody nipples.
All right.
But then I'm like, I don't need that. So
yeah, I think you can get by with the what you got on hand. Right. What are you working on now? Like, what are some of the projects you have going on?
I'm still ongoing with the first batch of customs. I just finished up some design work for the Detroit Marathon with the Running Lab out in Detroit. I finished up, I think there's a pair of Peg 40s that are going to be released specifically for the Athletic Annex in Indiana, coming at the end of this month, hopefully. That'll be only exclusive to them that I collaborate with them on designing. I think there's other stuff, but I just can't remember at this time. But
yeah, so it's interesting to like put it all together, and you're obviously now a fan of the people that are wearing your singlet. I'm sure like the Boston singlet that Ben had, which resembled a Boston Red Sox baseball
yes.
They're not singlets. What do you even call those?
Jerseys?
Yeah, baseball jersey. Yep. Which came out phenomenal.
Thank you.
And I'm sure Ben loves it. And I'm wondering, and maybe we'll have to have Ben call in, like, or leave a message on this, what he does with all his Greg singlets and stuff like that.
The first one I did for him was the Nike Ekiden one.
Yeah.
When those,
like this, it was like stars or something. Like
it had like the topography lines in the Nike Pro Kit barbed wire design.
Yeah.
And it was the same color as the shoes.
Was it the green ones? Green and black?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it's still on AliExpress or something, that cheap clothing thing you could buy bootleg stuff. There's a lot of my customs that have been bootleg.
Really?
That you can actually purchase.
That's insane.
And Ben's was one of them. When Ben's came out a few months later, there was other websites that bootlegged it and actually showed his picture
with it.
They took his picture off of Instagram wearing it.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to guess that is irritating on one hand.
A little bit.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I was listening to, what's his name from Off-White?
Virgil.
Yeah, Virgil Abloh. And he said, if your stuff is copied or that, it's the greatest thing ever.
That's the biggest form of flattery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not just flattery. Like, it's like, he's like, that means I did something.
Yes.
That works.
Yes, exactly. I'm a huge fan of Virgil. I'm wearing like an Off-White bracelet. I have some of his shoes and stuff.
Yeah, you're a bit like, I'll let you finish that and then
I'm done.
Okay. So I noticed one of the things that I love, and I think it was what's different about us at Believe in the Run, is we like the culture of style that we gravitate towards a certain style of running. And when I say style of running, not how you run,
right,
as much as how you look when you run,
right,
and kind of curating a look for yourself that expresses your relationship with running.
Yes.
And you seem to have a curated, like you're following, like I noticed you're wearing a Kith shirt yesterday. And I see every once in a while you get excited about, like, you'll post something on Instagram. Oh, did you all see this?
Right.
Kind of thing. Where is that been before? Like, is that like 13 years old? Got to have a pair of Jordans. What started it?
Okay, the origin story of Greg Itahara and custom. So my family was like almost like a lower middle class, so like working family, and I come from divorced parents, so So my dad couldn't afford like the Nikes or anything nice. So he bought me like my very first pair of Nikes wasn't until I was probably 8th grade going into high school. And so when I got them, like, oh man, this is so cool. I go to school, there are other kids wearing it. And I'm the kind of person that's like, I want to be individualistic. I want to like just be a little bit different.
Yourself.
Exactly. So I went home and I took a Sharpie and I colored in the swoosh. I just colored it in black and I went to school. And then the kids are like, where'd you get those? How come yours has like the black swoosh? I'm like, I just painted them. I just colored them in. So that it's always been ingrained in me to like take it a step up or make the box that you think you're putting categories in bigger. So I've always wanted to have in the running space sort of a mashup of street and running wear. Because when you go to the grocery store and you're running and then you go, you're wearing, a singlet or running shorts or running tights and you look like a runner. You're presenting yourself as a runner. I wanted something visually like a crossover between a graphic tee and a tank that if you go running, you go to the grocery store, it doesn't look like you just got off the track. It looks like you had some kind of street sense.
See, this is what I think is kind of funny because when I started running, I wanted to look like a runner. I wanted to say, hey, I'm part of this culture. You mimic or get in. It's like when I was skateboarding. Like,
I feel you. Okay. I feel you there. Yeah.
You get that look. You get your Vans. You get your khakis. You get your cotton T-shirt with Mike McGill on it, and that's your look.
Yep.
And it says to people, "Hey, this is who I am." And I feel like when you get into running, there's a certain look that's usually dictated by what's carried, or at least back then, what was carried at a run specialty store.
Yes.
As I've evolved as a runner, you start to want to play with it.
Yeah.
And you want, what? Cotton T-shirts aren't that bad for running in. I want shirts that, like, we have friends that run in heavy metal shirts that they've cut the sleeves off of. And, then now you see like Satisfy running and kind of what they're doing to an extent. And I see you kind of like straddling in this gray area of it where you're doing one-offs, which is great. But then it doesn't allow for mass people to get a hold of it. Is there any type of, I think I just totally switched tracks on this one.
That's okay.
But is there any plan to make them, like, obviously Running Warehouse would be something that would be a little more mass produced, but like almost like a signature line?
So there is a running store that does want to do that with me. It would be sort of like a Greg Itahara collection. It would be running performance tops, but with a street graphic feel to them. But I just haven't had time to. And they're saying no rush on it. It's just something that's sort of like in the back of my head that they suggested.
Yeah, because I've seen other, like, you watch collabs with these different brands, and they take an artist and they do a line or something like that. Even if it's just a limited edition, like release, like Rabbit's done one with a local LA artist and stuff like that.
Right.
Like, I think that would be a fun, at least exploration. But then I also think you could probably create your own.
I don't need the headaches of.
You don't want that.
Like bunch of T-shirts like in my closet that I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta sell these. That I have too much responsibility with other stuff I have to deal with. So
all right. Yeah. Getting back to like kind of like you're getting into it, you said that you weren't able to afford much.
Right.
So you prize these things and being able to kind of add your flair to it.
Yes.
But then I'm guessing you had to go to art school or something. What's the path?
So the path was, not to be stereotypical, I sucked at school. And I truly believe now that I have ADHD, which is nothing to be ashamed of. Creatively, it's a blessing for me because then I could switch on and off. I could look at, it's almost like looking at like a fine pieces of art, and not just from the front. You're looking at it in all directions, and that's how kind of like my mind works. Like I go from one spectrum to another, and sort of like seeing, okay, what works, what doesn't work. So I was a really poor student in school, but the only thing that sort of kind of like kept me sane was drawing. And my father was a professional photographer, and I would go to his work, and I would see agency people come in with like sketches of how they want the photo to look and the lighting, and I'm like, wow, that you could actually get paid to draw. Yeah. And my dad said, I don't want you to be a photographer, for one, because it was hard for him, and he just didn't want me to go through the same struggle. But he always encouraged me to do what I love, and he knew that art was something that I loved, and he always like encouraged me to keep pushing towards that. So that's sort of where it kind of all began. And then I didn't go to like a university or like, you know, one of those big, you know, cerebral colleges. I went to art school in downtown Chicago, Columbia College, and it was just art. The college that I went to really kind of looked into whatever specific area of art you wanted to do, whether it was journalism, photography, art.
So almost like a trade school of art.
I mean, in a way. I mean, you still got your core academics.
Okay.
But in this route, it was more or less like the final exam, you had to express it in whichever degree you're trying to get into. So I was going into graphic design. So the final exam wasn't like a written test. It was sort of like a presentation. Mm-hmm. Like, how would you present everything you learned, but apply it to graphic design? So I thought that was sort of like a cool way to learn. And like,
see, that's the thing you said earlier. You weren't a good student, and I always think of that thing like if you ask a fish to climb a tree, it's gonna fail. Right. It doesn't make it a bad fish.
Right, though. Right.
And I also was in a situation where school was difficult and not difficult at the same time. Like mm-hmm. I was able to get by. Like I knew the line that I needed to hit mm-hmm. to get my grades. And then the rest was me drawing and doing that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I do feel like I always argue with like pretty much myself, but that like today's kids, the way that they put them into a classroom, I can't sit still for 6 hours.
Right.
And then you take these young kids who should be out playing and experiencing and mm-hmm. doing stuff, and you shove them into a classroom and you say, okay, you have to focus now on something incredibly boring.
Yes. That
you have no interest in. Mm-hmm. We're going to sit here for an hour. Mm-hmm. And the boys, and I have two boys, okay. They're going nuts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, why can't they rethink it? And, they like interactive stuff. They like to play, make it a game. Mm-hmm. Like, if you made it a game, an interesting game. Mm-hmm. So when I got into art, and I started having to use the computer to generate the art. Mm-hmm. I thought I was really bad at math, but when I had to start doing like sizing mm-hmm. and creating canvases and doing mm-hmm. like, okay, if I have to split this canvas up into 3 parts,
yep.
all of a sudden math makes sense, and it's
yep.
like boom,
mm-hmm.
boom, boom, boom,
mm-hmm.
and you can do it. Now, if you just say something abstract to me in math, I can't do it, but
right.
And I'm wondering, in the same aspect, you said, poor in school or ADHD, when you're creating and when you're using computers and stuff like that, do you find that you're able to grasp those concepts like almost naturally?
Yes, because it's something related to what you want to do. Like,
there's a motivation.
And then there's like, you want that outcome to be perfect, So it's sort of like, training your brain in a different way to something that you like, that you could actually learn it. But yeah, the whole school thing, I totally agree with you on that. It's sort of like almost regurgitation. Yeah.
I feel like it's punishment.
Yeah.
So anyway, as you're moving on now, mm-hmm. let's talk a little bit about your running.
Okay.
Because now you're into running.
I mean, running, like physically running?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been running for a while, to be honest. I've done 5 Chicago marathons. I've done that whole Dopey challenge.
Oh, you did the Disney Dopey challenge?
Yeah, that was dopey.
It just seems like that would be, unless you're really into Disney, it would be a boring course because like aren't you running through like parking lots and stuff?
It's all on Disney property, so there aren't any crowds. It's pretty much on-course entertainment. So you run a mile, you see a character. I stopped at every character stop because I needed like something to like to
break it up
because I was going like my mind was so numb. It's kind of boring just to drive on like Disney property by itself, but if you're running it, it's even worse. so I'm like, sure, I'll wait in line for like 30 minutes to get it. I mean, it's not for time; it's just for fun. But yeah, I've been running for a while, but because of that, I wasn't privy to like stretching. So all these years, and this is going back to high school, I've never stretched. And it really caught up to me because now I have like those spurs.
Oh no!
And I got an X-ray on both my feet. They look like fishing hooks.
Oh,
in my heels. I mean, it's a big, like you could catch like a tuna with it.
Could they do anything with that?
They said, well, we could give you shots, which ironically, I hate needles, even though I got tattoos.
But people say that.
I know.
Needles and tattoo needles are so different.
Right. It's a totally different experience. It's not.
I'm with you there.
Yeah.
I've kind of gotten used to it because I have to give blood every once in a while for if you're going to do inside tracker or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's still nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm used to like the needle, like just poking through the dermis for like this, but when it goes all the way through, I'm like, oh, forget that, you know?
Yeah. Oh, so gross. Yeah.
But yeah, the whole stretching. So my podiatrist said, you know, it's connected to my calf, and that's why I'm getting these heel spurs because my calves are so tense that I need to stretch. But it's sort of like after the ladder now of like, oh, now I have to stretch, but now it's just sort of.
So they can't do anything about
They could go in and operate and like. And that just freaks me out. Like, I don't like people touching my feet, let alone me touching my feet. Yeah. So I'm like, I'll deal with the pain, but I won't. So my marathon days are probably over.
Okay.
Because on certain days, I can't even put pressure on my heels. It's that, and then I have to start stretching out my calves. But spontaneously, they just sort of flare up, and I'm like, great. So then I go back to my art. And
at least you have the art.
Yeah.
I feel bad for people who only run and don't have another outlet.
Right.
Because when you're down, it's hard to get.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hard to get through that.
Yeah.
All right. So that takes care of pretty much your running career.
I can do 5K. I can do 5Ks. And I just can't do the 18 weeks of
that's fine.
Ramping up training.
Not everybody has to be doing a marathon every week.
No. And I always say, if you lace up your shoes, and even if you just run a block, you're a runner. It doesn't matter how long or what your pace is. If you're out there with the mentality of just being healthy and get moving, you're a runner. So
yeah, I would agree. All right, so I think we're pretty wrapped up. We covered a lot. Anything else you want to tell us?
No. I mean, I'm just happy to be here. It's really surreal to be here because I see a lot of your posts and I follow you guys and of course Gafuzi and Asics and
everybody's here.
Everybody's here. I'm like, hey, now I'm here. Like this is
You're like part of the group.
Like I was in my hotel. I'm like, not to say that I made it, but the reality of wow, I'm getting interviewed by Thomas at the HQ in Baltimore. I think I made it.
Well, I thought you made it when you got interviewed by Kafuzi in Chicago. Yeah, no, it is. I think that I love our events because we can bring people together, and I do think it is, especially when we have someone like yourself, Kafuzi, other people that you may know from online, but you don't know,
right?
And you get to come in and you get to meet us, and you realize, hey, we're just
everyday people,
right? We just happen to have a passion for what we're doing,
exactly,
and you get to hang out. So like, You got to experience a little bit of like one of our events last night.
It was amazing. Me being an introvert
it's tough, right?
It's tough because you're going into a sea of people and you don't know anybody except for like you and Kofuzi and Asics people. Yeah. But it's sort of like, I just want to be that fly in the wall, kind of thing. But your event, there were some people that recognized me, and I sort of like hung out with them, which was so cool. And that just seeing the whole community vibe. I mean, that's what I think it's really the core is community and spreading the joy and spreading whatever you can to help others
enjoy the place.
And you're elevating not only yourself, but you're elevating them. You're elevating the brands that you collaborate with. And it's not based upon numbers. It's not based upon, financial stuff.
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's all about having good vibes.
So when you got here, and that is because I used to consider myself an introvert. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, you probably wouldn't think that.
No,
but I am like when it's outside of my comfort zone. Like I'm very comfortable around runners because I know that there's something I can talk about.
Right.
If I say to a runner, "What are you training for now? What are you doing?" Mm-hmm. I don't have to say another word. That person will talk for half an hour.
Right.
Yeah. Like okay, great. Mm-hmm. And these events what I like about it is that people all come together. Mm-hmm. I see the smiles. I see the laugh. The fact that we incorporate, even though it's like last night, it was a 3-mile run. Mm-hmm. If you are feeling awkward talking to people, once the run starts, it's kind of like that freeing, like you're in motion, you're going, you don't have to make eye contact with anyone. You're part of a group.
Yes.
Without having to interact maybe like on one-to-one.
Right. You're in a group, but you're still an individual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then like afterwards, like, I was amazed. Like when we got to the brewery, was that insane?
That was crazy. I mean, I had to take an Uber over, and even the Uber driver, so we drive up, and he's like, "Damn, this place is lit." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a running thing." He's like, "Oh."
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy. I'm glad you were able to come out.
I'm glad that. You invited me and Asics.
Yeah, we started chit-chatting on Instagram.
That was awesome.
Hey, it would be cool to have you out. I think that there's this neat little universe that is surrounding some of the stuff we do, and you're part of that universe. And and you're bringing something special.
I think we all, as individuals, like yourself, like Kofuzi, bring that little extra special vibe to the running community. And I know that like the big companies are recognizing that. And I feel like it's more or less it's more of the word of mouth kind of vibe. It's not like the big companies like.
It's not sales. It's
not sales.
We're not.
Exactly.
We're not sitting there saying, hey, buy this. Or
right.
We're marketing. And even when we do events like with Asics, we're not like, hey, buy Asics. We're like, hey, this is great that they want to help us reach out and create experiences for runners, and that's what's awesome about it. But, and I'm fortunate enough. Like Kofuzi's a one-man show, but I have a great team. Like between Robbie, Megan, Brandon, everybody here, Helen. That I really am fortunate. That we are able to create a little micro community, and then people seem to like what we're doing. And
what I really like about what you guys do is everyone is different on your team. Everyone brings a little bit of something special to it. So it's not like
cold cut.
Right. So it just kind of like really makes it even more. So
well, thanks for coming out.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm sure we'll see you again soon. I mean, are you going to the running event this year?
I don't think so. No, I think Asics is doing something totally different, which is fine. No, I always joke that I'll be in the corner of my house crying between painting stuff. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we will check in later and see what's going on. If you want to follow Greg, give him the Instagram handle.
It's ITAHARA, I believe, _. art, A-R-T.
Follow Greg, see some of his artwork. Try to get yourself one of his singlets if you can.
It's getting harder, to be honest.
Yeah. Or buy one of Ben's used ones, but I doubt he'll give those up.
Get them real cheap. You got to size up because
Yeah.
they're made for Asian bodies. That's what they said on the website.
Oh, on Alibaba?
Yeah.
Okay. It is. So even with Asics, sometimes I got to go up a size because if we're getting the singlets, they fit a little bit snug.
Yeah, I got a singlet from another company, and I put it on, and I'm like, either the sizing is off or I'm getting fatter. So it's usually a little bit of combination of both.
All right, man.
All right, cool.
Let's call it.